We got to start a little bit before the TV was available. We are talking now about board and committee openings. The Board of Health has one opening. The Town Hall Building Committee has two openings. The Finance and Advisory Committee has one opening. Announcements. The Discount Rain Barrel Program is available again through TGARB and the town website. Deadlines for orders is May 12th at midnight, with pickup at the DPW yard on May 18th from 8 to 12. Now we open it up for public comment. If anyone in the audience has anything to say. Hey, Russ.
Hi there, good evening, everybody. I'm Russ Tanzer, 100 Orton's Road, and I am the chairman of the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust. I wanted to add to committee openings that we are looking for an additional new member for the Affordable Housing Trust, and applications can be reached through Joe's office. So please consider.
We may have two openings.
Well, it depends on
the, but just to let people know that we need some names.
We need some names, we need some folks, we need some help. Get involved. Thank you.
Any type of backgrounds, Russ?
Well, you know, some real estate background, some general town knowledge as to how things run in our community, some knowledge of what affordable housing is all about, what it means, how important it is for our community, and our quest to smartly grow the affordable housing stock here in town. We could really use some help.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you, Russ. Okay, now it's time for Selectmen and Town Managers Report. Since Wednesday, I'm sure we've had a lot going on.
I know, couple of days.
Bill, you want to start?
Well, tonight the planning board is having a meeting, I think right now, between 7 and 9 at the library to sort of maintain their master plan work, and it'll be a good session tonight, so hopefully that's why people aren't here, because they're over there attending that. And then the Affordable Housing Trust had a meeting last week, and we looked at some projects that, so it's good. We have a couple of things going in front of us right now, looking at a few projects. One on Asbury Street near the cell phone tower. Might be an opportunity to pick up some land and work with Habitat for Humanity. So we're looking at the feasibility of that. And then there's a property that in the early stages of planning off the Gordon property off of Bridge Street. So we've asked for a lot more information before we can give an opinion, because there are just too many schematic plans with not enough definitive. So we've asked for some additional. He said it needs about a month before he can come back to us with some definitive plans. So
Got it.
I think that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Rosemary, do you have
Thank you.
anything?
I think I said everything in 4 days ago, so I'm all up to date. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sean, do you have anything?
Nothing tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I've been in touch with Vicki Massoni, our energy manager, and we're going to have a meeting, and Rosie's going to join us on Friday, and we're going to take a look at, you know, the EV charging stations, future goals, solar feasibility, grants for municipal sustainability, and she's going to give me an update on the landfill PV.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so
Good.
we'll find out what's available for grants and see what we can do for the town.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for doing that. I don't have anything to add either tonight. Joe, do you have anything?
I have a town manager report because I hadn't done one since the first meeting in April, but
Okay.
I'm not going to read the whole thing here tonight. I'm just going to hit a couple of high points. On the PV solar land site, just so you know, there is a site walk tomorrow with the project manager and the town, and after which they expect to be applying for their permits. So that process is clicking along. A couple of things that I just want to let folks know about. A lot's happened since April 1st. We had town meeting, we had an election, we have new members, that's all great. A couple of sad things. We have had two folks decide to retire, and a third person decide to leave to pursue a different opportunity. So we'll be advertising shortly openings in our assessing, treasurers, and town managers' offices, not me. Thank all those people for their dedicated service, and we're going to miss them all here at Town Hall. The treasurer, collector, and director of assessing will both be with us until the end of the fiscal year, so we've got some time to work on filling those. With the news of the retirements in the Finance Department, Marissa Batista and I began reviewing the announced reorganization of the Finance Department, and we expect we will be making some adjustments to that plan. We're going to continue to meet, but the purpose of the Finance Department reorg was to kind of help that department evolve into how it would function in the future. And with these vacancies, we may not have to actually change as much as we thought, but more just kind of better define roles and job responsibilities and things. So we're looking at that, and we'll fill the board in on that as we finalize that plan. Also, some sad news. I'm sure most people in town know already that Hamilton lost a longtime member of the community. Former Hamilton police officer Ed Hopping passed on April 23rd at the age of 84. Ed was a police officer in town from 1969 to 2001. And his funeral service was held Saturday from First Church in Wenham. Also let people know formally that the town is going to be seeking bids for ambulance service and senior van service. Both those contracts are up at the end of this fiscal year, on June 30th, and we don't want the town to go without any interruption of service. So,
What's the period of time for this? Would it be 1, 2, or 3 years? Are you looking?
it'll be determined when we get the bids in. The ambulance contract in particular isn't required to be bid by state law, but it's been a while since we've done that, and we decided it would be worth it to do that. And the van service, again, they're separated, but currently the same provider serves both, so both contracts are up. We put them both up. And we're gonna, Chief Ray Brunette was key in helping develop both those documents, those procurement documents, and he had, with the senior van service, he had the help of the Council on Aging and myself, as I'd had input from several folks, housing and stuff, about this van service in general. And wanted to make sure people are aware that on May 19th, the kind of downtown merchants and the HDC, the HDC is not sponsoring, this is just an event of volunteers of the business district, but the HDC is supporting it. It's a kind of a shopping fair celebration day. We're closing Bay Road, not Bay Road, that would be terrible. We're closing Railroad Ave, from Bay Road to Willow for several hours on Sunday the 19th, and people will be able to walk in the street and participate. There are over 20 vendors already signed up for the event,
great.
so that should be a big fun day. Hopefully, the weather cooperates and they don't have to move it to a different date. And the rest of the report will be on the town website.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Joe. Okay, for the consent agenda, we have approved the minutes from the Board of Selectmen regular meeting on April 9th, 2019. And the Golden Stick Wiffle League requests permission to use Patton Park from August 23rd to August 25th for the Hamilton Wenham Family Tourney and National Championships of Wiffle.
So moved.
Lou is here in case you have any questions. Right?
Okay.
Is that Lou?
Yeah, I brought a flyer for you all as well.
Okay.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, Rosie.
Does anybody, I'm sorry.
No, please.
Am I allowed to talk?
Yeah, come on up.
Was anybody here present when we did this in 2011 and 12?
Yeah.
At Patton? You, Sean? Anyone else?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So it's really the same thing, only that was our fast pitch. And this is our, what we call our medium pitch. It's a little bit more relatable. That fast pitch was really, those guys are inhuman. And within this league, we actually have some young players. And, so this is going to be on Saturday, will be kind of the national championship,
Wow.
the first day,
Big
in which a
league.
lot of teams are eliminated from championship contention.
Thank you.
And then on Sunday, as the field thins, we're going to open up for one day a Little League provided family classic tournament, which is, moms, dads, guardians, brothers, sisters. And there's a rule there that one kid under 12 and one adult minimum per team. We've done that in the past. In fact, look back. Thank you. I'll leave these up here, okay?
Great.
In fact, If you look at that picture, that's from, I think, 2013. That's Galen Goldfeld. I think that was his first name, but he's a Hamilton Wenham kid who's now about 6'3". So this is an opportunity for, you know, the uber competitive folks to kind of step aside and let families play what they currently do in their backyard. And that will be a Little League co-sponsored event. So I'm the president of Little League this year, and that's my first year as president, and I'm going into my 18th year running Golden Stick, so kind of mashing the two together, and this is what you got.
Great.
Setups on Friday the 23rd, and then play will be Saturday and Sunday. We'll be out of there with breakdown, probably 6 o'clock Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
We'll use the lights on Saturday night. That was always something we needed to kind of talk about, and we'll be out of there 10, but I could make it 9 if needed.
Okay.
Okay?
And you were working with Sean and Tim and stuff on parking and stuff like that?
Yep. It worked last year. See, the teams that'll be there will probably be at 20, 25 teams, but they all carpool because they're coming in from all over.
Right.
So it's not like they're all Hamilton teams and everybody takes their own cars. So the teams, it's almost like 1 car per team, maybe 1.5 if you really averaged it out. And we think we're really cool, but not a lot of people come to our games and watch. So we'll really see kind of a community migration of people, which, as you remember, when we had this before at its peak, there was quite a few people. There was probably 200-300 community members, but they all kind of walked there, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
They all walked there. So we're looking to revive it. And now that I have Little League roots, I think I can probably have even more of an impact on messaging it. That was all messaged by Len Dolan at the time and Phil Tachi.
Right.
Now I have the keys to the email platform, so I'll get it out there.
Yeah, the parade was great on Saturday, or hundreds, I don't know how many kids were out there, but hundreds and hundreds of kids, so it was
Yeah,
pretty
we had
impressive.
400, just under.
It's impressive, so thanks for that.
Yeah, plus, were you there?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, plus siblings.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was a great parade.
How many people do you think were there?
I mean, it was.
If you had to say.
It was, it was between 500 and 1,000, but I had no idea, so.
So I think that it's 400 players.
Right, so it must have been
Mostly
almost
two parents.
1,500, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it was 1,500 to 2,000 if you really do the math.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a good one. The weather, what a window. It was
Yeah, right.
so nasty, and then it just cleared.
That was good.
I know that you guys did that for us, so thank you.
We planned for you.
So that's basically, I just come and lay it
That's
out
it.
for you, and,
Yeah, that's it.
all right, great. Any other questions for me?
I have a question. I don't know much about this Golden Stick. It sounds like lots of fun. My question is that a Hamilton league, or is it a private league? Or tell me, just to understand a little bit.
So it is
about-
private. I started in Danvers, in John Archer's backyard, in 2002. And over the course of 03, 04, 05, it really started growing. And then in 2009, I opened up in New York. 2010 to 12, which is when you saw us here, we were truly national. We were in 20 states across the country. Now it's really decelerated. I'm getting older, I'm busier. It's now really New York and Mass with some other teams coming from other spots. But our home field is Pingree School. So,
Pingree,
yeah,
okay.
so the Massachusetts region, as we call it, is a Hamilton-based league. We play up behind Pingree.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, no,
Thank
of course,
you.
of course.
Thank you.
And then the family thing, I think we'll find to be all community members. We're not gonna really advertise that out beyond the North Shore and certainly in town.
Sounds like
Is
fun.
there a sign-up deadline, Lou?
Not official yet. We'll see what that looks like. We also want to see if there's a cap to the number of family teams. If every team at that parade came, it would be unmanageable. So I'm thinking find a way to make sure it's big enough that it's inclusive, but also that we can run it really smooth in our first year doing it. We haven't done the Family Classic for a few years. That picture taken was in Hamilton. The first ever of these events was at Pingree School.
Great.
So it's yours to own.
Thank you, Lou.
Right?
Thank
All right.
you.
Yeah, thanks,
Appreciate
Lou.
it.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck with the things you're here for. I'll leave these, okay? This is both our nationals and the youth. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lou. All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I made a motion, I don't know if we
Oh,
have a
you
second.
did?
Yep,
Okay,
Second.
Sean.
all right.
All right.
We can only vote on one of the items, you and
Right.
I.
Do you want to
Okay.
take them one at a time then? Do you want to do that? Would that be
Probably.
easier for everybody? So I'll readjust my motion.
All right.
I make a motion, first to approve the minutes from the Board of Selectmen regular meeting on April 9th, 2019.
Second.
Awesome. All those in favor?
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean, for doing that.
All right, and I'll make a second motion to approve the Golden Stick Little League request for permission to use Patton Park from August 23rd to August 25th for the Hamilton Wenham Family Tourney and National Championships of Wiffle.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Great, thank you. All right, on to the agenda. We have Jim here to review the annual audit from Clifton, Larson and Allen. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, everybody, for having me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
And everybody get a copy of the PowerPoint handout just to go through the presentation of the audit? Great. So,
Since we only got one gentleman in the audience, do you have an extra copy of the PowerPoint that you could provide?
Oh, of course.
If not, I can share, I can let him have mine and just follow along with Jeff, but seems silly to leave Mr. Britton out.
Special treatment.
If there were a room full of people, I wouldn't ask for that, but I mean,
all good.
thanks. Appreciate that.
Sure thing. All right, so just to give an overview of what the presentation is going to cover, we're going to overview the other engagement terms, just give a summary of the results of the audit. Then we'll get into some key financial statement highlights as well as some key disclosures. And last, we'll finish with the management letter, just some suggestions for improvement in operations. Nothing major, but just comments of certain things we identified in the audit. So as part of our audit, we're engaged to provide an opinion as to if the financial statements that you were all also provided a copy of are presented fairly in accordance with GAAP. And as part of that audit, not only are we providing an opinion that the financial statement amounts are fairly stated, but there's also a report on internal control. Now, that report is not an opinion on internal control. It's just a report of if we've identified any deficiencies in internal control surrounding financial reporting of the town during our audit. And another deliverable as part of the audit is just the management letter, which we'll cover last in this presentation. That letter isn't as significant as the internal control report. If anything were to show up in that internal control report, it'd be a pretty significant deficiency in financial reporting. However, with the management letter, it's more suggestions that we come across that we want to call to the attention of management, even though it's not significant enough to be materially deficient to the town's financials. So just to give an overview of the results of the audit, starting with the implementation of GASB 75. Now this required implementation just required the town to present the full unfunded net total OPEB obligation, whereas last year the presentation was the net OPEB obligation. The total liability needs to present on this year's financial statements. You'll also see there were some restatements that were required of the beginning net position as a result of having to present that liability. So. As far as the overview and the results, town received an unmodified opinion this year. It's the best opinion available. And you'll see there was an emphasis of the matter paragraph in the audit report near the opinion paragraph, which will discuss the implementation of GASB 75. Now that does not impact the opinion. It's just a required report as a result of the significance of that new implementation. Also in the internal control report, we note that there weren't any deficiencies identified that were significant to financial reporting, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and also no non-compliance identified with laws and regulations as a result of our procedures that we performed on the financial statements. And then also we'll get into the management letter comments, but just another deliverable as a result of the audit. Now, are there any questions at this point before we get into some of the financial statement amounts? Okay. So just to give an overview of the government-wide, the governmental activities, the town had net position of around $9 million at year end. Now, in that calculation, there is an unrestricted deficit that's present in the unrestricted net position of the town of almost $12 million. Now, this situation is primarily due to the presentation of the pension and OPEB liabilities in the government-wide statement. Now, this isn't an uncommon situation across communities. It just, those liabilities are very large, and it's a common occurrence for these to offset the net position to cause it to go into a deficit. So, moving into the general fund, the fund balance at year end was around $6 million, and you'll see that in the components on page 15, as well as in one of the footnote disclosures, just gives a breakdown of what the components of that general fund balance are. Just important to note, and we'll get into it a little more on the next page, but the unassigned fund balance at year end out of that total general fund balance was around $4.3 million, and out of that 4.3, there's 800,000 stabilization funds.
This will change once from what we voted on town meeting, right? So,
Correct. Next year, it'll be a different scenario for
different
us.
scenario, which was a recommendation from previous years on this that we've taken, or?
Well, the recommendation was from the DOR.
Was the DOR,
When we
okay.
did the financial policies over again, or we're in process of doing over again, so.
Okay.
So you'll see on the next page of the presentation, it just gives a sort of a snapshot of the unassigned fund balance as a percentage of expenditures and transfers out, or the operating needs of the general fund. You'll see over the past couple years, it's been fairly consistent. There was an increase in 2016 related to a capital asset sale. However, that fund balance has remained healthy over the past 5 years and consistent over the previous 2. You also see on page 19 just an overview of the activities in the enterprise funds. The water enterprise fund net position totaled $5.3 million.
Page 9.
I'm sorry?
Page 19.
19.
19 of the report. 19 of the report, gotcha, okay.
Yep. And what that statement will also present is just the activities of the waste removal fund, which was dissolved in fiscal 18.
Right.
So just the concluding activities and the closing of that fund. So just to get into some key footnote disclosures as well, Note 8 will be the first disclosure that we call attention to. It's on page 46 of the financial statements. Basically, this is going to give an overview of the significant long-term liabilities of the town, just gives a detail of the current year activities and those long-term liabilities. The top liabilities in those disclosures, debt, compensated absences, pension liability, OPEB liability. I mean, these are common with other municipalities, but it'll just give an overview as to the results of those liabilities during the fiscal year. So, Note 10, we relate to OPEB. We previously discussed the implementation of GASB 75. What this also required was some increased disclosure information, and you'll see that in Note 10. Just to give some key highlights, the total OPEB liability at year end was around $8 million for the town. And as a result of the discount rates used, what's also required is that there's some sensitivity figures that are required to be presented just to show the current assumptions are presented in that disclosure, but what the disclosure is also going to present is if those assumptions were to change slightly, the discount rates, the healthcare cost trend rates, those are also going to be presented if those rates were going to change. That sensitivity disclosure information is also presented there, just to give an idea of the flexibility of that discount rate and the healthcare trend rates.
Pretty significant.
Definitely. Yeah, you'll see there's just slight changes in those rates can cause.
Percent changes at 3 million.
Yeah, exactly.
And now recurring disclosure on Note 14, just the pension disclosures. This year's net pension liability at June 30th was around $10 million. You'll see that this is around 2.5% of the town's proportionate share of Essex Regional is around 2.5%. It's a slight decrease from the proportion from last year. And again, similar to OPEB, there's going to be some required disclosures surrounding the sensitivity of that liability to any changes in the discount rate assumption there. Before we get into the management letter, does anybody have any questions on the financial statements or anything on the presentation at this point?
Page 10, back on page 10, can you just explain what governmental activities with the 22.5 million in the total debt, is that our actual total debt as a municipality?
Yes, the total debt is the total debt of the municipality. It's actually presented in the government-wide statement of net position. That's the only place you'll see that total debt figure presented. The fund financials won't present those because it's going to report those expenditures currently. It won't show the long-term liabilities in those fund financial statements. But in the total government-wide, yes, you're correct. It's the total governmental debt.
Okay.
For the town.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So just to go through the just the management letter comments, there were 5 comments and recommendations this year. 4 of them were repeat comments. 1 of them was a new comment this year. So first, with the Veterans Memorial Pool. And you'll see the detail of the comments in the management letter. But basically, there were, as far as the prior year's management letter that was issued, there were some recommendations that were implemented during this year's audit. So this comment has been reduced, but there were still some recurring points of that comment that we wanted to continue to recommend. So one of them was just related to the login software of the recreation department over at the pool, just to make sure that each employee is assigned a single login. It just increases the audit trail. It's a common recommendation we'll provide where recreation software is used. Another recommendation we provided was just the periodic reconciliation of membership fees to actual memberships that are issued at the pool. Just that reconciliation, making sure that the fee collections reported actually match what's being sold. Just another important control that we recommend implementing. Moving on to the information technology comment. So as a result of this year's IT consultation, we found that, again, a recommendation would be to actually implement a formal policies and procedures manual surrounding the IT department specifically. And you'll see that there's some recommended elements in that comment. Another comment was just the password and security policy to get into the financial software and other important softwares, just to make sure in getting into the computers as well that there's required password security strength. Our IT team looks at the best practices, just tries to come up with a standard as far as the password lengths and getting into the information system. So that was just a comment that, as far as the best practices of the password security, that those be implemented and strengthened. And then as far as there's a vendor management component to that comment as well, just that the IT department does a formal review of vendors that are authorized in the information system, and that any unauthorized or delinquent vendors are removed properly. So,
Joe, are you looking at that as an internal or an external solution? It says you're evaluating costs, benefits of internal costs or
We're evaluating everything that has to do with IT, including studying the feasibility of going to a regional IT solution. So the idea would be that if we go in that direction, whatever we go into with other communities would include that type of level of security for our financial software. So primarily, internally, we're going to use Andrew to try and strengthen things as much as we can this year with what we have, and as we look for alternatives to the way we do IT anyway. So.
We haven't had anything to date that's concerning just long-term risks assessment.
Okay, so the next comment just relates to water billing and adjustments. There's a certain percentage, a small percentage of certain water billings and properties that are billed based on estimates. Just a recommendation we would provide is that those estimate readings be eliminated and replaced with actual readings. So that it would require some updating to the billing process. Cash receipts, that comment is actually new this year. The town's current practice, or maybe formal at this point, or former at this point, is that departments outside of the treasurer's office were collecting payments for certain services provided to residents. It was our recommendation that a centralized collection process be implemented where all the receipts are actually turned over to the treasurer's office to ensure that there's a centralized location and proper recording by a centralized member of personnel, just to reduce that risk of the transporting and the recording outside of the treasurer's office.
Do you have an example of that happening?
I think one of the examples, to be honest, I can't recall if the building department or we can even take, we could take recreation, like if receipts are being turned over there would have to be a transport to the treasurer's office. Our recommendation would be that those receipts are actually turned over to the treasurer's office directly as opposed to being turned in and then being transported to the treasurer's office.
When the veterans pool, they have little kids coming in with their $5 bills.
Yep.
So they have to do something with each child who's going to hand over that $5 bill. So I think what they do at the end of the day, is that right? They
Yeah.
run it to the treasurer's office.
Okay.
Recently, the fire department engaged in getting its own software to be able to do burn permits online. But that means they're collecting money now, so we want to make sure that that money is being turned over to the treasurer's office and reconciled there, where it's the way that all receipts to the town should be reconciled through the collector's office.
Gotcha.
Makes sense.
And just the final comment, just on the risk assessment and monitoring. I know that there's been progress related to the overall financial policies and procedures on the town side, but just the risk assessment monitoring plan, it's just a consistent recommendation, just because there's always risks that arise during the course of operations, that those risks are there's a formal plan, a documented plan, just to consider those risks and ask those questions as to if there's any risk areas in the town. And there should be a formal policy in place, as well as a monitoring plan to make sure if there are any actions taken against those risks, that they're monitored, and certain departments are monitored appropriately to make sure that those risks are reduced. And there's a full detail in the comment that'll detail detail the elements of that plan and our suggestions there.
So Sean and Joe, remind me, we had targeted a bunch of financial policies that we were working through. How many did we get through out of those?
I was here for you adopting 2 of them, but I think you had adopted a couple of those last summer before I started.
I think I want to say we've got 5 of them done.
Out of like 8, was there 8?
Yeah.
5,
Yeah.
maybe.
So
But did any of them deal with this? Was this one of the ones on there, or sort of a
On the
risk
last,
assessment? I don't think that was one
I don't
of them.
think so.
no, wasn't one of
Policies.
them.
Okay.
I can't remember the other ones offhand that we have left, but there's probably another 5
Okay.
that we have. There's
And
about 10 or 12, I think,
We
that
had
we recommended.
agreed that because of, kind of some open positions still in the finance department and
Gotcha.
the crunch of the budget season and everything else, we would put those off until after the town meeting. So Marissa and I are talking about how and when we begin to take those up again with you and the finance commission to start to move those forward, so.
Yeah, and we had prioritized, I think, the bulk of them with Marissa.
Stabilization funds, we had 2 of
Yeah,
them. And
yeah, and so when she's ready and we're ready, we'll come back and circle back around those.
Okay.
But I think overall, a very clean audit, right?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. No, this, again, with the management letter, just, again, their suggestions for improvement. If anything significant were to come up during the audit, not only would it show up in the financial statements in that report itself, but that internal control report is really the key indicator as to if anything significant's come up, so.
No, and I think over the years, we've done very well and had clean audits. I would say this is probably one of the not that it can be better, I guess it can be better, but I'd say not that they've been bad in the past, I guess. So we've maintained clean audits, and this one, I think, with the implementation of getting rid of our, was it the revolving fund, for the waste stuff, we cleaned that up, and then now we've got our cleanup for town meeting from the stabilization funds and the capital improvement plan. So I think we're moving
And
forward.
the other stuff is just these small cash receipts, because the pool is basically the same as the other ones. Basically, they're 2 different ones, but they're
Yeah.
basically lumped together. It's just how you track money.
You have to make
being-
sure you track them
How
separately.
that's being carried somewhere.
Right, and as he
collected
said,
somewhere.
we've had the pool recommendation for a number of years now in the audit.
And
every
we are
year we
working
tick
on it.
off a
It's just
little
that-
bit more of it, and
It's just that for a small operation, sometimes the approaches that are recommended are,
And what are we
don't
collecting?
make sense for the
What are
amount of
we
money.
collecting at the
We're
pool?
trying to,
collecting
we're
about
trying to address that,
$1,000.
we're trying to
It's hard
address
to
the
get
comment
the
without
cash
necessarily,
weekend.
taking on additional cost
to
that
get
doesn't need to be
safe.
taken off.
And what are
of
we
the
collecting,
amount.
$1,000 at the pool, or, I mean, it can't be.
Probably a little more than that, but still,
Over the
it's,
course of the summer.
right, and as
Marissa has
Darcy
some
just
ideas.
mentioned over here, I don't know if you heard it, but say Saturday, Sunday, the pool's open, they're collecting cash from people coming into the pool. They can't come to town hall and give it to the treasurer collector because
Right.
there's no one here.
Yeah.
So they put it in a safe and then they bring it on Monday morning.
So, one thing to keep in mind too is that, we ask for the management letter because we want suggestions every year.
Right.
there will be something every year, no matter how clean we get.
Right.
They'll find some way to make recommendations.
Even though our goal is no
Right.
recommendations.
Even though our goal is always no recommendations,
Right.
we ask them for the management letter, we will always get recommendations. So that's not, it shouldn't be something that people get all overly concerned about. There are things that we should
This
be
is a
paying
clean
attention to.
report.
We're very appreciative of the comments, because we're looking at how to answer those comments and comply as much as possible, but
Yeah, and I think.
you're always gonna have some
yeah.
comments.
Yeah, at one point, I think when Marissa was here one time for one of the audits, and she had previously done audit work very similar to this, and we said, do you ever get one that's nothing? And she said, no. We always find something.
That's what you're paying them for.
That's exactly what we're paying them for. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate that all this time was pre-me, so I can't take any credit for this. This is Marissa and the Finance Commission, the Board of Selectmen, and the effort, the focus you folks put on it. But I appreciate walking into a situation where it's this clean.
Right.
The unfortunate part is the only thing that can happen under my watch is that it gets worse, and I don't want to see that happen. So.
Joe, these responses, the manager's response was prior to you, and you've read them all and sort of agree with you don't differ from any of the responses?
As I said, we recognize, Marissa and I have talked about them, we recognize the comments, and we don't disagree.
Okay.
We just may disagree with
Right.
how we decide to approach a couple.
Right.
That's
Okay.
all.
Fine. Fair enough.
We have to keep in mind that we're such a small organization, really, that it's tough to implement some of these things with the monetary
Yeah.
constraints with it, so.
That's good.
And I would just note too, with those comments and recommendations, like John says, there's always going to be certain suggestions for improvement, and that piece there where they show up in the management letter, just suggestions of improvement as opposed to any sort of significant reporting there. But I also wanted to thank the finance department, treasurer's office for their help during this year's audit. They were always very accommodating, providing the information timely, and that greatly helps move along that process. So I wanted to include that as well.
Any questions, from the board? Peter, you have any questions? No? All right. Well, thank you, Jim.
right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. All right.
Have a good night.
Good night, Joe. Second item here, I hope you'll help me out, Joe. Discussion of appointment of Christopher S. Campbell as a special municipal employee.
Right, so technically what we're going to ask you to do tonight is consider taking a vote to appoint, or to designate the Board of Assessors as special municipal employees. We're not specifically talking about Chris, but Chris is the reason this has come up. He is employed in the school department, and under Massachusetts state law, you can't collect two checks from the same entity. So when he was elected as a writing candidate, he was eager to help out, but in doing the right thing, he talked to the state, said, hey, I'm a teacher, and they said, well, you have to either give up the seat on the Board of Assessors or ask to be designated, or ask to have the assessors designated as special municipal employees. The town does have history with this. You've done it twice in the past.
Right.
Well, Danielle was a part-time employee in the rec department, and she began working in the pool. They had to make that kind of assessment for that position as well. And then when Allison, who was employed by the town at the time, became a select person, you designated the Board of Selectmen as special municipal employees. So this, Donna has sent along some language that if you want to consider this, to allow Chris to serve. We specific wording here that.
Do we have the language?
No, I got it from Donna this afternoon. I gave it to
Okay.
Jeff, so.
Okay.
So it would be to move that the board designate the position of members of the Board of Assessors as a special municipal employees position under the state ethics law.
So moved.
Second.
Great.
Discussion?
Any discussion?
So I always, the worst statement, you always look at the worst, what's the worst thing? I mean, that seems like all makes sense, but what's the worst case scenario that we're.
If you don't do this, Chris will
He's got to resign. from
he'll
one of these.
resign, and then I'm not sure if there was anybody that got enough other write-in votes that the worst case scenario would be that we'd have to have a special election to fill one seat on the Board of Assessors.
It's always worked favorably in the past to do this. We've never had an issue from this.
We haven't had.
No, we haven't. And I think, we want to do as much as we can to help promote volunteerism and people helping out with all of our different boards and committees. And so I think this just goes hand in hand with that. And thank Chris a lot for stepping up to the plate and accepting the write-in.
How many
votes.
write-in did he get?
96, was it?
Oh, that's impressive. That's a hard. That's a good
For
campaign.
write-in campaign, and I think that Chris, had he known that it was going to work out that there wasn't going to be a candidate, he probably would have pulled papers and been on the ballot instead. But he saw that there was a need and there was nobody had pulled papers, and he, as Sean says, he did step up and ask for people to vote for him, and he got himself quite a few write-in votes, which is impressive in a short amount of time.
But this just deals with him, though. If it happens again, we have to vote every time it happens.
Every time it's a new
Yeah.
thing, right?
Okay. That's fine. I'm good.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
All right, unanimous, great. All right, that gets us to consideration for topics of discussion on the next meeting. We talked about a lot of items on Wednesday. I don't know if, does anybody have any additional things they'd like to add?
No, I traded voicemails with Gretel Clark, so I'm not sure if it's ready to be on the next agenda, but we're going to sit down and talk about waste management strategies and how we can make some improvements in the town to cut costs and save the planet, so.
Good, got a message from her as well, that's
my
great.
motto.
So I'm not sure if it's ready for next month, probably not ready for next Monday, but maybe a couple weeks.
So there was a draft agenda originally planned for this meeting that we kind of separated out to allow this meeting to be shorter. That has already been drafted, and I believe if it hasn't already been forwarded to you, Jeff, it will be first thing tomorrow by
Okay.
Annabella. You can take that and any of the recommendations that you board made at the last meeting. I have several pages of them, and we can talk about those tomorrow at some point
Okay.
if you like to try to
Yeah.
figure out what should be on.
That'd be good.
And what you want on, what the board wants on, and we'll get that drafted. I think the goal would be to have the chair agree to an agenda by, chair and the vice chair agree to an agenda by Wednesday.
Okay.
So that we can make sure we know what materials have to be accumulated to support that document and post it.
Get it out to everybody. Okay, excellent. That sounds good. If there isn't anything else, there's some signatures here that we need primarily from.
It's Bill and, you, Bill and Sean.
And the deeds,
most-
and two
then
deeds.
Two deeds, but the deeds, so I have a question about the deeds, and I'm not sure about this, so I feel a little flustered. But were these deeds approved by you prior to the board changing? Because the signature page is set up for the old board. So either it was approved by you guys.
John would know, but I don't.
Previous meeting.
I don't
I
remember.
don't remember that we voted on that one specifically, but.
There's two of them here, and if they weren't, then we have to bring these forward at the next meeting for you guys. And it's only a week away, so we have to redo the signature sheets. But Bill, it's Bill, you, and Mary Alice on the
Okay.
minutes. That's
Let
it.
me see if I can find one of our last agendas.
Right.
Can I add one thing, Mr. Chair? about
Yes,
the
of course.
New business. So Bill's talking about having Gretel in for the Waste Reduction Committee and talking about I'm sure it's bi-weekly trash pickup and mandatory compost is one of the things they're aiming for. I think also we should think about as well bringing back our discussion about it's a pretty big discussion, but it's our paved, unpaved, plow, no plow, trash pickup, compost pickup stuff for our streets policy.
Yeah.
Because I think it's all going to factor in there, especially if we're talking about trash pickup and compost and stuff like that. How does that affect all of the developments in town and stuff that are on a private way or something like that? How do we work out those details?
Could I suggest that the previous board had suggested that maybe Tim and I could do some work with
Yeah,
representatives
that's what I
of
was gonna
different
lead
private
into, yeah.
ways? And now that we're kind of through getting you guys organized and everything else, town meeting and getting the board organized.
Yeah,
Tim and
because
I-
you guys need to do a little footwork with
We need to-
those
with
developments
those
and also
developments, understand
with
what's-
Casella and.
Casella
yeah.
and everything else, so I'd like to ask you to give us a couple weeks to try to plan a meeting.
Yeah.
And then we can try to come back from that meeting with some ideas about whether things can be put together or some stuff be separated.
Right, because we'll have to figure out our contract with Casella too and what effect that has on.
I know that the latest request from the one neighborhood that had been asking for that, for instance, had been that they would pay the difference
Right.
between
Their current cost. and
current
what the-
cost and what the town's pickup would be. So they're paying an exorbitant amount of money for trash removal, and they understand that you don't have to give them that, but that they're asking if they pay with the difference between what you're paying now, what the town's paying now, and what it would be after they get added, instead of paying much more money that they're paying up there.
Sense.
That might be something that you.
Right, because
folks could
just for
approve
Darcy
of.
and Rosemary's, and I'm probably talking too much about it because they were just talking new business, but the entity that Joe's talking about, I think they were paying about $8,000 or
Yeah.
so for pickup.
Yeah.
And if the town picked it up, it may be $2,000 or so. So a significant difference for that.
The
that group of
attitude is
folks.
and
Should encourage them to come.
And ironically, Casella turns their truck around in their
Right, they park
street
in there.
because
I heard
that's
that.
the
That's the
last
end.
spot that
That's the
gets
end.
picked up. So they
To
come in, they
walk
pull
in
onto the street, and they back out on Asbury Street, and
they
they pull
leave.
away,
why
but
it's
they
only-
don't take anything
That's why it's
while they're
only-
there.
that's why it's
So
only
it'd be-
$2,000.
It'd be, I think that is, it might be something the board wants to consider. I'll just leave it at that, so.
Okay.
If you could give me a couple, certainly I will check into to the stuff with Casella and have that information for you at an upcoming meeting. But I don't know that we'll be ready for either May 6th or might be early June, first meeting in June. But I want to make sure I have time to schedule a meeting that people can come to and things with Tim and I.
And then we're going to do board assignments next week. I didn't.
Yeah.
I started mine. I didn't send it to you, but I'll send it to you
Great,
tomorrow.
okay.
Is that what we're going to do? We do that next?
Yeah, I think that'd be great if everybody could do it by then.
Okay, so we can send it to you, scan
Yeah.
them as a PDF and just
Yep.
send them to you, okay.
Yep, just send them right in. Excellent. All right. Unless anybody has anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
No discussion? No.
No discussion.
Thank you all
There's
for
still time to go
coming.
to the
Oh, Peter,
For the
still time to go to
record, I will say
library.
that since I came aboard, this is the shortest board of selectmen.
Yeah, I know, that's it.
There's also
I hope
three.
this is a start
There's
of
also
good
three in a
things.
row. There's also 3 in 10 days. So there's also 3 meetings in 10 days.
Right.
That's true, that's true.
But there's still time to go to the library if you want to go to the
That's a good point.
that time I might head over there myself.
Yeah.
So we'll get that. to you
Peter, do
first
you have
thing.
anything to add, or are you just coming for some support? Just checking in?
Do you want, I just got
Here you go. Here, here's a blue pen,
here these,
and there's a place there for Bill to sign, we'll be all set.
the auditor's report?
Yeah.
You want to borrow them?
Here.
That's theirs.
Rose, you can have mine. You want the whole report and the
I
management
would
letter?
like to take a look at it as
all
a
yours.
novice, just to educate myself. Thank you.
No problem.
So, can we suggest things for the meeting for the agenda? Do you have full items? Do you have a full agenda for next week?
Joe's going to send it in the morning.
We'll
of
send
what-
it to you in the morning. It's already pretty long, but depending how long the items are, you can have what you want or take other things
Yeah.
off. There are a couple of things that I was hoping that you would consider as far as kind of starting to talk about what the schedule in preparation for special town meeting will be. I have a member of my staff that might need to go up for some surgery, but he
Yes,
doesn't
for
want
the
to mind himself.
floors.
He wants to be able to plan his surgery around that so that he can be available to his board and committee and to us. So, I'd like to
with
get
the,
that on next week's agenda so that we can have
think with
the
the
timeline
new
for him so he can
capital
plan what he needs to
committee.
plan with his doctors.
Yeah.
They're gonna look at
So,
doing
that's on the same
we've
vein,
done them
talking about
before,
the
but I
wetlands
think a
protection
more
bylaw.
thorough one is in order
That's
of
pretty
a asset,
easy to do. I've done
kind of a
some
look at all of
research
our
on it.
assets,
I wonder if
buildings,
that we could
equipment,
add that
everything, and
into
do a real
discussion
analysis of it from a third party.
I mean, as far as, you want to have that ready for the
One
special
of
town
those
meeting.
things would be some kind of a manager
So I mean,
report.
setting what the deadline is for the special town meeting and then understanding what, whose help you need and timeline work you need.
And the
You
other
know,
thing is, if
Conservation
we put
Commission,
solar on the roof of
part-time
that
employee,
building, because it's got a
Conservation
great
Commission,
orientation,
medical,
that
dealing
could
with
pay
some
for the
candidates,
radiant heat.
We're hopeful he'll be back
part
and
of
healthy
it.
soon. He'll be working
Yeah, I
part-time.
think I think it'd be fine.
But he has.
I was looking for an old agenda from the
So,
first to see
you
if
know
it
what,
was
I've heard
on.
that the Concom is pretty light on manpower. and
It's only him.
Right, but I mean, in general, the Conservation Commission, there's some
You can do,
members
yeah,
that
lots of,
and that's
yeah. That's what
something
Vicky's
that
looking at now
I
for
think
the,
people
some
are
of
not
the
gonna